What's the biggest driving factor for getting your loaves to kind of explode with oven spring? Do baking stones and Dutch ovens really have that much influence? Well, I'm going to go back to basics. I'm going to lock away my baking stone and my cast iron baking pans to see if I can get my loaves to spring without using any of that gear. This is going to be super helpful if you're just starting out and you're wondering if you really need this type of gear to bake a decent loaf. Right, so with no heavy duty equipment in sight, my plan was to bake the loaf directly on the oven's baking tray. Now my tray is lightweight and it doesn't retain much heat. So I was worried that this dough might kind of spread out over the tray and leave me with more of a pancake than a loaf. So to try and kind of sidestep this potential disaster, I switched my attention to my formula. Now, I want to keep things super simple, and by using a combination of 90% strong white bread flour, 10% whole wheat flour, and a hydration of 74%, I should, hopefully, be able to create a dough that's extensible, stretchy, while being stiff enough to avoid spreading into a puddle when I slide it onto that oven tray. Now, if you want to experiment with this recipe at home, you can take a screenshot of the recipe here. Okie dokie, so here's my leaven. After leaving it to ferment for 12 hours overnight, you can see it's increased in volume and it's super bubbly and vibrant. Now our leaven is the foundation of the entire process. If it's not strong, everything else is going to come tumbling down. Now for me, the taste of my leaven is just as important as the visuals, and this one tastes of ripe bananas, dry white wine and yogurt. Overall, it's pleasantly sour, so I know it's perfectly fermented. I add the water and the salt to my mixing bowl, and then I give it a really good stir. Next, I add in the strong white bread flour, the whole wheat flour, and lastly, my sourdough leaven. I bring that mixture together using a spoon before finishing the mix by hand. Now, the goal here isn't to create a smooth dough, it's just to bring these ingredients together so that time can work its magic. The dough gets covered and left to rest. Now, don't forget, this entire process was carried out at a constant 25 degrees Celsius, that's 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And as always, your timeline and the duration of the fermentation is going to be influenced by your kitchen temperature, the temperature of your ingredients, the type of ingredients that you're using, and the vitality of your leaven. Right, so if our leaven is the foundation of the process, then the bulk fermentation can be considered the superstructure. Now throughout this stage, the bulk fermentation, the dough is going to strengthen as our gluten network develops in the dough, and thanks to our vibrant leaven, the dough is also going to start to ferment. Now my very first job during the bulk fermentation is to give the dough another quick mix on the bench. That's just to make sure that all of the ingredients are really well combined. I do this 30 minutes after the initial mix, and then I leave the dough to rest once more. After one more hour, I'm going to stretch the dough right over my worktop. Now it's not a tug of war competition, I want to be careful. I work around the dough gently, feeling for how far it wants to stretch without ripping it where possible. Then I fold the two sides of the dough into the center, and then I follow up by doing the same with the top of the dough and then the bottom. Now the dough goes back into the bowl for another rest. 1 hour later, I repeat the exact same stretching process. Then the dough is left alone to complete the bulk fermentation by increasing in volume by 75%. Okay, so here's my dough after the bulk fermentation period, and as you can see, it's increased in volume by around 75% or so. The dough feels strong, it supports itself, and I can actually feel those fermentation bubbles throughout the dough. So now it's time to shape the dough and then prove it in the basket where it's going to spend the final part of the fermentation chain. Now, I keep my shaping super simple. I dust the top of the dough with flour, and then I turn the dough out onto the bench with the flour side facing down. I take the sides of the dough, I fold them into the center, and then I fold the edge over that's closest to me. Then I roll the dough up while maintaining tension on the surface as I'm going. When I reach the end, I press the dough together just to stop it unraveling. I flip it over, and then I work along that seam, pinching the dough closed. And to be honest, that's pretty much it. I flip the dough over in rice flour before placing it into the basket with the seam side facing up. Now I just cover it and I leave the dough to prove at ambient temperature until it reaches the top lip of the basket. I gently press the dough to judge the amount it's proved. It should feel nice and puffy, but not on the verge of collapsing. Now, judging this takes practice and experience, and your intuition will kick in over time. Now, I cover the dough and I pop it into my fridge so it's ready to bake the next day. Right, so during the baking process, I need to make sure that the dough is able to spring up in the oven before the crust sets too quickly. Now, I can do that in two ways. I can do it by shielding the dough and then adding water and ice to the oven to create steam, or I can cover the dough during the first part of baking. Now, to make this as easy as possible and easy to replicate and remove too many variables, I chose to cover my dough, and I'm going to show you the results from 3 separate bakes. Now, for each bake, my oven was set to conventional bake mode. That delivers heat from the top and the bottom elements. It was preheated to 220 degrees Celsius or 430 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I placed an upside down baking tray on the bottom rack. That makes it easy to slide the dough in and to take the loaf out. So for the first and second bakes, I scored the dough, then I used my bread peel to slide it onto a non-stick mat. And then I covered the dough with my large pot. But for the third bake, I used non-stick baking paper to stop the dough from sticking. I swapped my bread peel for the cover of a notebook, and instead of using a large pot, I made a DIY cloche out of aluminium foil, and then I used that to cover the dough. Now, each loaf was baked for 20 minutes covered and then 25 minutes uncovered. Right, so we'll do things a bit differently now. Rather than me give you my opinion on the loaves, why don't you tell me what you think? And to answer my question from the beginning, what's the biggest driving factor for getting your loaves to explode with oven spring? I've got to say this, it has to be successful fermentation. That's got to be the key to getting the best spring possible. While baking stones, cast iron pans and steam are great for polishing the bake off, they really aren't the heavy lifters. Spending your time focusing on the fermentation chain and actively monitoring what's happening with the dough is going to get you so far. But in defense of my stone, I'm going to say this. While all of the loaves sprang really well, I could not get the same shiny, crackly crust that I'm kind of used to. So I'll let you into a secret. I'm not going to be throwing away my baking stone anytime soon. It was really good to take things back to basics and see what's really achievable with a minimal amount of kit. Now, if you do try the method at home that uses aluminium foil, just make sure to carefully fold it up afterwards and then you can reshape it for future bakes. Remember, sustainability should come first. Now, if you want to know how to make your loaves explode with spring using a coffee pot, you can join me in this video here. This was fun. Why don't you give it a whirl and let me know how you get on? Oh, and stay tuned.